The early 1900s were a time of great change and tension in Europe. Countries formed powerful alliances, each seeking to protect their interests and assert their dominance on the global stage. These alliances were often complex and interwoven, creating a delicate balance of power that could easily be disrupted. They competed fiercely for land and resources, particularly in Africa, where colonial ambitions led to intense rivalries. The industrialization of Europe further fueled this competition, as nations sought to secure the raw materials needed to power their growing economies and military machines. Nationalism was on the rise, with fervent patriotic movements sweeping across the continent. These movements often glorified the nation-state and promoted the idea of national superiority, further inflaming tensions between countries. Citizens rallied behind their flags, driven by a sense of pride and a desire for their nation to be recognized as a major power. There was a pervasive sense of suspicion and mistrust among the great powers. Diplomatic meetings were often tense, with leaders wary of each other's intentions. The intricate web of alliances meant that any conflict had the potential to draw in multiple nations, creating a highly volatile situation. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914, ignited the powder keg. This single event set off a chain reaction, as alliances were called upon and nations began to mobilize for war. This event triggered a chain of events that plunged Europe into the abyss of World War I. The streets of Europe were soon filled with chaos, as news of the assassination spread and countries began to prepare for the inevitable conflict. Newspaper headlines from July 1914 captured the growing sense of dread and anticipation. While the assassination was the immediate trigger, the roots of the conflict ran far deeper. The causes of World War I were complex and multifaceted, involving a mix of political, economic, and social factors that had been building for decades. The historical timeline of the war's causes reveals a tangled web of alliances, rivalries, and ambitions that made conflict almost inevitable. A complex web of alliances, imperial ambitions, and nationalist fervor had created a climate ripe for war. The early 20th century was marked by a relentless pursuit of power and influence, with nations vying for dominance on the global stage. Nationalist movements further exacerbated these tensions, as people sought to assert their identity and independence. This volatile mix of factors ultimately led to the outbreak of one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. Although Austria-Hungary's ultimatum to Serbia following the assassination is often seen as the starting point of the war, it was Germany's actions that were most critical in turning a regional crisis into a global conflict. Germany's backing of Austria-Hungary, its powerful military, and its desire for greater influence all played a significant role in the outbreak of war. Germany's leaders, particularly Kaiser Wilhelm II, saw the crisis as an opportunity to assert German power on the world stage. Germany's military plans, such as the Schlieffen Plan, were designed for a rapid, decisive victory in a continental war. Austria-Hungary, enraged by the assassination of its heir apparent, issued an ultimatum to Serbia, containing deliberately unacceptable demands. Serbia, backed by Russia, mobilized its army, prompting Germany to declare war on Russia on August 1, 1914. Germany's declaration of war on Russia activated a complex web of alliances. France, allied with Russia, mobilized its troops, leading Germany to declare war on France on August 3. Germany's invasion of neutral Belgium on August 4, a key part of the Schlieffen Plan, brought Great Britain into the war on the side of France and Russia. Germany's actions were driven by a complex mix of motives deeply rooted in the political and social landscape of the early 20th century. The Kaiser and his advisors believed that Germany was being encircled by hostile powers and that war was inevitable sooner or later. This belief was not unfounded, as the intricate web of alliances and treaties in Europe created a highly volatile environment. They also sought to expand German influence in Europe and beyond, fueled by a sense of nationalism and a desire for Weltpolitik, or world power. This ambition was reflected in their colonial pursuits in Africa and Asia, where they aimed to establish a global presence. However, Germany's leaders miscalculated the resolve of their adversaries and the potential consequences of a wider European war. They failed to recognize that other nations were equally determined to protect their interests and maintain the balance of power. They underestimated the power of nationalism in countries like France and Great Britain. National pride and the desire to defend their homelands galvanized these nations, leading to a strong and unified front against German aggression. They also failed to anticipate the devastating impact of modern warfare. The introduction of new technologies and strategies, such as trench warfare and mechanized weaponry, resulted in unprecedented levels of destruction and loss of life. The horrors of World War I were a stark reminder of the catastrophic consequences of miscalculation and the relentless march of technological progress in warfare. In the end, the motives and miscalculations of Germany's leaders not only led to their own downfall, but also reshaped the geopolitical landscape of Europe. The war left deep scars on the continent, both physically and emotionally, and set the stage for future conflicts. The lessons learned from this period continue to resonate, reminding us of the complexities and dangers inherent in international relations and the pursuit of power. Section 5. Europe erupts, the opening salvos. The year was 1914 and the world was on the brink of a conflict that would change the course of history forever. With declarations of war issued, Europe was plunged into chaos. The intricate web of alliances and treaties pulled nation after nation into the fray, creating a domino effect that seemed unstoppable. German troops marched through Belgium, aiming to knock France out of the war quickly. The Schlieffen Plan was put into action, a strategy designed to avoid a prolonged two-front war by swiftly defeating France before turning to face Russia. Russia mobilized its vast army, posing a significant threat on Germany's eastern front. The sheer size and speed of the Russian mobilization caught many by surprise, adding to the urgency and tension of the unfolding conflict. The initial stages of the war were marked by a sense of optimism and naive enthusiasm. Many believed the war would be over by Christmas and soldiers marched off to battle with songs and cheers, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. But that quickly faded as the reality of modern warfare set in. The romantic notions of heroism and glory were shattered by the brutal conditions of the trenches and the devastating new technologies of war. Trench warfare, poison gas, and machine guns resulted in unprecedented casualties on all sides. The landscape of Europe was scarred by miles of trenches, and the air was thick with the smell of death and destruction. The war, initially expected to be over in a matter of weeks, dragged on as both sides dug in, leading to a protracted and bloody stalemate. The optimism of the early days was replaced by a grim determination to endure and survive. The front lines stagnated, and the war of movement gave way to a war of attrition. Soldiers faced the constant threat of artillery bombardments, sniper fire, and the ever-present danger of gas attacks. The Great War had begun, and it would leave an indelible mark on the world. Section 6. Women in the war, immediate consequences. The war drastically altered the roles of women in society. Women were thrust into the workforce, taking on jobs traditionally held by men. They worked tirelessly in factories and on farms to support the war effort. Many women also served as nurses, tending to the wounded on the front lines. Their contributions extended to volunteer organizations and war relief efforts. The war also sparked a movement for women's rights and suffrage. The old societal norms were challenged, and the role of women in society was forever transformed. Section 7. The Russian Revolution, a world transformed. As the war dragged on, its impact reverberated far beyond the battlefields of Europe. In Russia, the Tsarist regime, weakened by military defeats and economic hardship, was overthrown in the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. The rise of communism in Russia sent shockwaves through the world, creating new ideological divisions and setting the stage for future conflicts. Section 8. The Seeds of Discord, the Treaty of Versailles. The war finally ended in November 1918 with the defeat of Germany and its allies. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially ended the war but sowed the seeds for future conflicts. The treaty imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including territorial losses, disarmament, and crippling reparations payments. These punitive measures created resentment and instability in Germany, contributing to the rise of extremist ideologies like Nazism in the years that followed. Section 9. Total War's Legacy, a New Era of Conflict. World War I left an indelible mark on the 20th century. It ushered in an era of total war, where civilians were increasingly drawn into the conflict. The war also accelerated technological advancements, such as the development of tanks, airplanes, and chemical weapons. These technological innovations would have a profound impact on future conflicts, making warfare even more deadly and destructive. Section 10. Shifting Sands of Power, the Decline of Empires. The war also led to the decline of empires and the redrawing of the map of Europe. The Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires, once major powers, collapsed, replaced by a patchwork of new nations. The war also weakened the British and French empires, setting the stage for the rise of independence movements in their colonies. Section 11. The enduring shadow World War I's long reach. The legacy of World War I continues to shape the world today. The conflict's impact can be seen in the ongoing tensions in the Middle East, the rise of nationalism and populism, and the challenges to the global order. The war serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the importance of diplomacy and international cooperation in preventing future tragedies. Subscribe to the channel for more insights into history's pivotal moments.